Are you looking for a way to make co-parenting easier? Talking Parents can help you streamline your shared parenting responsibilities and minimize conflict by keeping all interactions organized and documented. With Talking Parents, you can stop worrying about the he said, she said, and focus on what matters most, your children. Download the app in the Apple or Google Play Store and start a 30-day free trial today. I'm excited to be diving into mediating complex divorce and the 5 keys to success. With me today, our guest is Jessica Ticktin. Mediation can be an effective and streamlined approach to complex divorce if you follow the 5 keys to success recommended in today's episode. Jessica was an administrative judge in the Family Probate Guardianship Division of South Palm Beach, Florida. She retired after 6 years and began her mediation practice to resolve family probate, guardianship, and civil disputes. You can read more about her background in the show notes. Jessica is also enjoying the heat of Florida after a week in the glaciers of Alaska. So we're going to heat it up with Jessica. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me on. I'm very excited and happy to share the information that I have learned throughout my time serving as a circuit judge in Palm Beach County, Florida, most of it in the family division. So hopefully I can help some people understand a little bit more about what happens in there and how to make the most of it in mediation.
Yeah, so we're talking about these complex situations, right? You've got special needs kids, you're divorcing someone with some kind of a addiction or personality disorder, you're dealing with really complex, large assets, like the ones that just cause a lot of contention and a lot of expense. And so I'm always thinking, is mediation really the best approach when there's so much complexity? So today I really want to have you share with the listener your 5 keys. And I would love to start with that start early suggestion of yours. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes. So timing is everything. And I absolutely think mediation is worth it. And in most areas in the state, it's required, if not all, before you can even get in to see a judge. So timing is everything. Knowing you're going to go to a mediation to try to resolve the issues before a judge has to see the case. I think the earlier you can go, the better. Just because litigation is so expensive and it doesn't just take a toll financially, it also emotionally will take a toll, and it can be extremely devastating to the entire family. Everyone who knows a couple who's going through a high conflict divorce is going to suffer. So the sooner the better, not just because you have a chance of getting it resolved early, but even if you don't get it resolved early, you get that chance to see what's going on. What are the real issues, and what's the case going to be about? Is it going to come down to who gets the house? Or is it really the children's issues that's going to be the big problem? So it'll give you insight usually and information. But as far as timing, like I said, I think the earlier the better, with the caveat that you don't just jump into mediation before you've done any discovery in the case. Most of the time with high conflict cases, the lawyers need to start getting some information together and understand what the pieces will come together to show, so that you know what's a good way to resolve the case. If you're blind to all of the information, it's almost impossible for any attorney to recommend to a client, yes, you should do this or do that. And that's in my experience, they will not.
Absolutely. And folks, she's talking about that net worth statement. It's called a lot of different things in different states, but it's basically a form that lists all of your expenses, your assets, your investments, your debts. Am I missing something? Are those the 4 categories?
The financial affidavit, right? It's your income. So usually it's broken down by monthly income, gross, and then net. And then you've also got your spending monthly, which is really difficult for people to figure out because not all expenses are the same every month. Sometimes you pay it every 6 months. That's the information that you really need to look at when you're making financial decisions. What is the house worth? how many bank accounts are there? Where has the money been traveling over the last year or two? Just those types of things are important.
So what I'm hearing you say is start early, and starting early requires that you do your discovery beforehand. You gather all of this financial data because you can't negotiate without data. And then starting early does a couple of things. I'm hearing you say one is it helps you see what the key issues and what the key rubs are. Like, where does your soon to be ex get really triggered? Where do you get really triggered? What are people holding on tight to? And what seems to be more smooth? And so even if you end up not succeeding in mediation, it can be a success because you walk away with a lot of information.
Exactly.
Beautiful, beautiful. And then the next key, most people think, well, mediation is cheap. It's me, it's my soon to be ex, and it's the mediator. We're not spending much money. What's missing out of that picture?
You didn't mention attorneys, which I recommend you do absolutely retain an attorney to go to the mediation with you. And yes, mediation is usually less expensive than having to go to trial, depending on when you go. But if you go to mediation with attorneys, it's a little more expensive because you have to pay the hourly rate for the attorneys.
Right.
Each side usually pays their own attorney. And then usually each party is splitting the cost of the mediator, whatever the hourly rate is. So on top of your own attorney, you're also paying half of the mediator's rate.
And I'm just going to play devil's advocate here. I mean, I'm going to a mediator who is either skilled in mediation or is also an attorney or might even be a retired judge. Why in the world would I need my own attorney?
The mediator's a neutral, cannot give anyone any legal advice. So that's one of the pitfalls I see people who don't know the legal system. They think that, let me just go to mediation and I'll do whatever the mediator thinks is best.
Right.
You can't do that. The mediator is not allowed to tell you what to do. Your attorney is the one who will give you the advice. Each party should have their own attorney who will tell them, this is what the offer is, and I think I can do better, or I think we can't do this well if we go to court. So I recommend that we either take this or let's make a counter offer. The attorney is the one who will explain to you, really, nobody can predict the future, but your attorney is going to say, I've seen this happen before.
Right.
And that's why I don't like this. What the other side is proposing is, it sounds great. However, it's dangerous. This is what could go wrong.
Have you ever been in a mediation where you were neutral and they didn't have attorneys and you were sitting there thinking, no, don't say yes, or don't say, like, is there a story that you can tell to back up this particular key?
There are several stories. So one of the more difficult parts about being a mediator from my perspective is I might know something that an attorney is talking to their client about, or if a client is not represented, that I'm not allowed to help either side. So if I were to tell somebody who's suggesting something like, oh, I could do this, I could do that, I'm willing to keep my name on the mortgage for the next 20 years, for example, even though the other party's going to keep the house, that's okay. I know that if that person had a lawyer, the lawyer would be telling them, no, absolutely not. You're not keeping your name on the mortgage because then you won't be able to qualify for any new loan. That's a terrible idea. I can't give that advice. So as long as, sometimes, yeah, I've seen things like that happen where, hey, it's like, I just have to stay in my own lane.
Wow.
I can't tell somebody, now look, it's different if I knew the other side were trying to pull a fast one. If somebody tried to send a mediator in, such as me, and say, hey, offer them this, but I know, tell them I'm going to do this, but really I'm not. Tell them I'm going to give them $100,000 tomorrow, but my plan is not to do that because I have no money. I'm just going to tell them I do so we can fake settle this. I wouldn't do that. A mediator is not supposed to misrepresent or lie or help anybody trick the other side.
Right.
But also can't save you if you're about to enter into a bad deal.
Yeah. And the other piece, I love that you said that. And the other piece of it is, so you just described having your attorney at the table, right? Which I've heard often referred to as facilitated mediation as opposed to just spouses and the mediator. And so even if someone doesn't want to have their attorney at the mediation table, what's the value then of having that advising attorney?
You don't have to have an attorney sitting there. I prefer it because then you can get the agreement done right away usually.
Yeah.
But even if you don't want to pay for your attorney to be there, and that's possible too, just to get the advice so you understand what's going on, you understand what the issues are, and again, how an attorney can look at a proposed agreement and say, you shouldn't sign this. This is going to backfire on you big time. This is a trap. So the other thing people might not understand is, yeah, you can absolutely go to a mediation, say, I think we have an agreement. This sounds good to me, but I want to run it by my attorney. So I'm not going to sign it necessarily sitting there in the mediation that day. I might take it home with me and say my attorney needs to review it. And then once you talk to your attorney after that mediation, you can either sign it or try to negotiate it after that too. It doesn't always work because sometimes people change their minds after, and either side could do that. So that's why I said my preference is to have the attorneys there in the mediation. We work through all of the little questions and details and get it done.
Yeah, I love that idea. So we've got start early after discovery. We have hire an advising attorney. Absolutely. You need to know your legal rights. You need to have an attorney to check with through however many mediation sessions you have, and seriously consider having your attorney at the mediation. And here's the deal. When you start cutting corners on this, when you're basically negotiating finances for the rest of your life and the custody for as long as your children are under your responsibility, that's not the place you want to cut costs.
Correct. So it might seem like it's getting expensive for the moment, but you save so much money. If you can get the case packed up and resolved, put away with the help of the professionals in a short amount of time.
Yep.
People save so much time, energy, and it's just better for the whole family when you can resolve these issues early.
Beautiful. Now, another expense. So your third key actually suggests perhaps another expense. And so I know in the collaborative process, they'll often have other key people who could help the process along come in. And I think this next key is suggesting that we can do the same thing with mediations. So can you talk about that next key?
Yes, as far as not just hiring attorneys, but in these high conflict cases, whether it's the finances that are very, I guess, confusing and there's a lot of money moving around, or there's issues with children, either special needs or just sometimes there are problems with one parent having either substance abuse or mental health issues. I think the best way to get through that is to bring your professionals to the mediation as well. Professionals being maybe a psychologist, a child psychologist, to help somebody who can help advise the parties how to handle this and how your decisions in a mediation that you think might be wonderful, how they do impact children, for example, and how maybe your decisions in the moment for your finances might seem great. But if you don't have a forensic accountant there with you who can explain to you, hey, wait, you didn't think about the taxes on this. That's great that you're getting all of the retirement accounts. That's great, except are you going to be able to touch any of those right now? So those are the experts that I know they're expensive and nobody wants to spend more money than they have to, but it saved, again, same point, is it's going to cost you more now in the moment, but it will save you 10 times that in the long run if you know what you're going for and what you need.
I've actually never heard a mediator say that. And what I love about that suggestion is so many of these cases that we're talking about do end up in litigation, and litigation is so slow. And you do end up hiring these people. I litigated, I had an attorney for the children, I had a custody evaluator. Like there was, so mine went on 3.5 years and there were all these extra expenses. And we started out with nothing and ended up just way in the negative. And the process can be contentious just being in litigation. And so folks, I'm just going to keep reflecting back to you. Start early, start after discovery, hire an advisory attorney, seriously consider having him or her at the table with you, and have neutral professionals, whether it's for the custody negotiation because of mental health issues or just emotional triggers of just the two spouses, and financial experts to help clarify and guide. So that's 3. We're going to take a short break to present our sponsors, and we're going to be back with what I think is one of the most important keys we're going to discuss today. Your kids may not be the only ones taking tests this year. SoberLink is the #1 alcohol monitoring device on the market for parents who need to prove their sobriety. Here's how it works. Your co-parent will test at scheduled times each day. Built-in facial recognition confirms their identity. Tamper sensors flag any attempts to cheat. And results get sent instantly to your phone. So you know your kids are with a sober parent, whether it's during school nights or weekends away. Set your family up for success this school year. Visit soberlink.com/JBD to learn more and get $50 off your device. Are you looking for a way to make co-parenting easier? Talking Parents can help you streamline your shared parenting responsibilities and minimize conflict by keeping all interactions organized and documented. With Talking Parents, you can stop worrying about the he said, she said, and focus on what matters most, your children. Download the app in the Apple or Google Play Store and start a 30-day free trial today. So, key number 4 is really about what kind of a mediator you hire. And I know one of my greatest resistance to mediation for my complex divorce clients is that so many mediators I've met and spoken to live and work in the world of amicable divorce. And to me, this is a different animal. So how do you address that issue?
Yes, absolutely. I think there's a huge difference between most of the family law mediators and a retired family judge mediator. And I'm not trying to talk myself up. I just know based on how busy my schedule is and why the attorneys are reaching out and really want me to be their mediator is because I was their judge for so many years, so many cases. They know that I have the ability to make decisions, that I understand the legal issues. And not just that I've done it, but they know my thinking. They know when you've had that person as your judge make decisions in multiple cases where you know this judge gets it, this judge believes in these things, or this judge has in similar cases where there's similar issues, high conflict issues over custody, over the finances, and they want somebody who's got the authority to be able to explain to people what happens. So this is really tricky because, like I said, a mediator does not have the ability to make the decisions for the parties or give legal advice. So there's a fine line between that. And I don't break the rules.
Can you share a little bit about, it sounds like you're informing without advising, if I'm catching that correctly. Can you just give us a little bit more detail so that the listener understands?
Right. I also already said too, I can't predict the future any better than the attorneys can. So I wouldn't even be able to tell people in their mediation, hey, this is what would happen if you go to court. I would never do that. Okay. But what I can do is I can say, hey, guess what? I used to handle these types of cases. I used to be a judge. I can pull up a final judgment right now and show you one that I've signed with this exact same issue. You want to know what I did in that case? I can tell you, because sometimes people come into mediation and they think there's no way a judge is ever going to do X, Y, and Z.
Exactly.
And I get to say, I've done X, Y, and Z. I've also done A, B, and C. The point is anything can happen if you're going to leave it up to a judge. So when people ask me, the lawyers like to ask me, what do you think about this or that? I can tell them what I've done in cases. I cannot tell them what to do. I won't tell them if they're right or they're wrong, but I just give them that insight so they can understand, well, gosh, if there was a judge that everybody respects who has done this before, maybe I should rethink my chances. Maybe there is something more to this. Maybe I should try to resolve this without taking my chances of losing everything in court.
So I've had a couple of situations where clients used mediators who were former judges, and I've always been rather delighted. Can you tell a story? Is there a story you have that involved something with conflict or contention where simply hearing the authority of someone who used to sit on the bench softened or moved forward? Or
a story? I have so many. So I guess I'm trying to think of any specific one, and I'm not thinking of any particular one because I have a lot where people have come into mediation And they've told me afterwards, when they have an agreement done, that they were not expecting to get to a resolution that day, and they consider it a miracle. If they try to give me credit, I don't like to take the credit, because I can't make, again, it's not my decision. It's all up to them, but it is, I think, a chance where mediation is a process. It is a breaking down process for many, because many people come into it thinking he or she is never going to agree to do these things. And letting somebody like a retired judge go in there and share experiences. And I guess maybe it's the best way is to call it playing devil's advocate. And that's probably the secret ingredient that I'm guessing most of the retired judges use is, I wouldn't come into your room if you're the attorney and the client and tell you all the things you want to hear. I would do the exact opposite. I would tell you all the things you don't want to hear, because you already know the things you want to hear.
Right.
So you already know, your attorney is already going to be saying, oh, we've got this and that, we're going to win. What your attorney needs to hear is, yes, but I've had other cases with this and that where it didn't win. So maybe there's another way to go about getting what you want, and breaking down and understanding the things that sometimes you come into a mediation and you think that you really need A, B, and C, and you can't live without A, B, and C. And then during the mediation process, when I guess a skilled and experienced mediator who's seen many, many cases, like a retired judge who's not just seen one or two mediations, but every day is in mediation and has similar issues, can give you ideas of, this is how a lot of other people can resolve this. And something you'd never thought of before suddenly appears, and it's acceptable. It might not be A, B, and C. It might be B, C, and D. So it gives you most of what we're looking for in the first place, and just a different way of getting there.
And I could imagine hearing that from the neutral mediator versus the other side's attorney could be the exact same words, but they're going to hear it better from the mediator who was a judge who has the experience. Love that. And then our final one is, we were talking offline, and I thought this was really wise. You talk about how to prepare and be strategic, knowing like the other person's need to win, I think is the way we said. So so this is the fifth key, and especially if you're divorcing someone who is always right or needs to win. And how does one deal with that? What's the strategy?
It's so very common in divorce situations. And one of the most common words that I hear is narcissist. He's a narcissist, she's a narcissist, everyone's a narcissist. I think it's really important that if you are in one of those high conflict cases, even if you're not dealing with a narcissist, and if you're not a narcissist yourself, sometimes I think, you know what they say in divorce cases, judges see good people
At their worst.
The worst, absolutely. And that's opposed to in criminal cases, you see bad people on their best behavior, because they're right. They want to.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right. So in family court, that's what we're used to seeing is good people overall, but they're going through the worst time of their life, and it brings out the worst in people. So whether it's a narcissist that you're going up against, or somebody who's just falling apart and making your life miserable, or they're so angry, they're so upset, either they don't want the divorce or they want you to suffer, whatever it is, if you know that's what you're up against in this high conflict litigation, when you go into mediation, it's very likely that person is going to, for whatever reason, need to have the last word, or feel that they have won. That's a big sign for me, because the way I look at it as a former judge and as a mediator is there is no winning. A divorce case is it's not like a civil lawsuit where you're suing your business partner, landlord, tenant, and there's a winner and there's a loser. Everybody loses in a divorce case. So when somebody's saying they need to win, or they feel they need to win, that's difficult. And you may never be able to get resolution, get a settlement when you're going up against somebody who needs to win, because they're not willing to walk away from what they really, really want, unless you're able to identify something and you prepare ahead of time and you think of whatever it is, whether it's like a little bit more money or the family pet. It's got to be some chip that you can hold back at the end to say, you know what? I'll give this up. Even if you were always planning on giving it up, that's great. If you know that it's something that has value to the other side, or even if it doesn't, sometimes it has no value to the other side. But like I said, they need to feel like they've beaten you, they've won. So a lot of times I see cases resolve when that finally happens and the other side finally says, you know what, I really, really needed the dog. That was my dog, but if he wants it or if she wants it so badly, then that's fine.
Yeah,
And
so it's really about that piece feels very much in the realm of the art of negotiating, right? Which is, and clients do this all the time. I've had clients who are divorcing professional negotiators, and I'm like, you absolutely need your attorney at the table. Like, you cannot do this. And there's an art of negotiation. And I think part of what you're talking about is being really strategic about what's your bottom line, but what's the bottom line you go in with, and then you can dip down so that the other party can be like, I got you. Okay, now we could do it. Now we can wrap it up because I won.
right, always be prepared to find something else that you can walk away from and that it's still going to be in your best interest to get it over with. And the silly cases, everyone's heard of them where it's, I don't know, I've seen them a lot where people are fighting over whatever it is. It's the blue sofa. I want the blue sofa. No, I'm the one that picked it out, but I paid for it. You know what? That blue sofa is worth like nothing. You can go and buy yourself a brand new blue sofa if you want for your new place where you're going to be living. But if you're not able to get over that and understand, like, yes, it's a loss in the moment because for some reason you're attached to that object. Once you get past that and understand that letting go of this whole case and the litigation and giving up that object it's going to be okay. It's going to be even better. So it's worth it.
And I've heard similar things with in high conflict cases with decision making, where my client and I work through, I understand you're afraid of him or her making decisions. What's the ones that you can give up? What can you put on the table and say, you take these and I'll take the mental health expert and the education, but you can have like medical and whatever it is. And that's actually using exactly that strategy. So I have a final question for you, but I want to summarize. So we shared that we were going to share 5 keys to successful mediation. And what we've gone through so far is that you want to start early. You want to make sure you do your discovery, fill out that financial affidavit prior to going into mediation. Start early also because it'll inform you of so much, even if it doesn't work. Don't cheap out here. Don't be penny wise and pound foolish. Get an advising attorney. Strongly consider having that advising attorney at the mediation with you so you can move quicker, sign on the dotted line. Have neutral professionals if it's necessary for mental health, for custody, for financial. Again, for the same reason, to streamline the conversations, get over the bumps and difficulties, if at all possible. Find out about the retired judges who are mediators in your area. Talk to your attorney about that. A retired judge not only brings so much to the table, they also bring a certain level of credibility, especially if you're dealing with a high conflict personality who doesn't necessarily respect too many people, but the retired judge may be on that list. And then finally, the art of negotiation. And you'll find in the show notes another podcast that I did with another mediator on the art of negotiation. Jessica's tip here is to know what you're willing to give up and don't be giving it up too early. Keep it in your back pocket. Know what it is the other person needs to feel like they got one over on you and they really won. And at the 12th hour, give that up. And that could really help. How did I do?
That was great. Wonderful. Yes, that's exactly what we were talking about. And I think those are my top keys. There's always more involvement in every single case. There are different issues. It's one of those things where you just, in your own case, I would definitely get an attorney who's going to help give you that strategy and guide you and give you that legal advice. But mediation is usually a great way to get things done before things get too expensive and ugly.
So my last question is, I have a lot of clients who are so intimidated by their soon-to-be ex that the thought of sitting in mediation with them, when I got divorced, we were live in someone's conference room. Now, even though you're on Zoom most of the time, the thought of sitting in a room and just watching their facial expressions, their tone of voice can trigger the heck out of somebody. I know a lot of mediators will do, and again, this is just a term I heard, might not be what you use or appropriate, but I've heard it referred to as shuttle mediation, where I'm in a room with my attorney, he or she is in a room with their attorney, and the mediator goes back and forth. So you're accomplishing the same thing, but the parties aren't triggered so much. Can you do that? Can you comment on that?
Yes, and yes, 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 all the way. One interesting thing I'll tell you, it changed. So before I became a judge, when I was an attorney and I handled family law cases, mediations were similar to the way you described for your own, which was everybody came into the room together and met with the mediator, and the mediator talked everyone up first together, and then they broke off into separate rooms. Since I left the bench and I started handling mediations, it was very awkward and odd for me because all of the mediations, the first few, they said, no, we don't start off together. We start off separately. And since it was after 2020, where Zoom became a thing, most of my mediations are by Zoom now. So, they don't even see each other. The parties do not ever see each other. And most of my mediations, unless everybody wants to come together, they wouldn't even know what the other person is wearing. So that takes that whole discomfort out of the picture. So when I start a Zoom mediation, I'll bring in, I know who's representing which attorneys with which client. So I'll bring one group in together and put them into a breakout room. And then I'll bring the other group in and put them into their breakout room without them ever being in the same room. And I've never heard of it as shuttle mediation, but we call it in caucus. So the attorney, each group has their own room. And if they're professionals, I'll bring the professionals that are with that person into theirs, and the other has theirs. So you have your own private room in person or on Zoom. It works the same. It's just that obviously in person, you might run into each other in the hallway or in the bathroom, going to the bathroom, something like that. With Zoom, there's no chance of it unless it's something that everybody wants.
I love that. And I think for me, that's the linchpin. It's like if you could do all the rest and you don't have to be face to face, you don't have to be triggered, you don't have to be watching body. To me, I think that's going to open the hearts and minds of so many of my listeners to consider mediation because it makes it so much safer.
I agree completely. And I prefer, so Zoom makes it safer.
Yep.
Also emotionally safer when you don't have to be triggered by that other person, because not everybody realizes and understands, because a lot of people who have been through a terrible traumatizing event, they don't show it, they don't talk about it, but they feel it inside and they're suffering. And not even an attorney can always tell that their client is just saying yes because they're scared and they are feeling threatened, and they're so well trained for years and years, this cycle and pattern of abuse, that they might do things they don't want to do just because they're trained to do that. But yes, I agree completely. And I love the way that we do mediations where everyone is separate. They're in a room. Each client is in the room either with their professionals or their attorney, and that's it. And then the mediator goes back and forth. So yeah.
Perfect. So this has been such a great conversation. I feel like I've almost been sold a little bit more on mediation as well, which is a journey I've been working on, is to trust and be able to encourage and advise mediation more. Do you practice in all of Florida? Do you practice across the country? Can you just share a little bit about your ability to support people and then how our listener can find you?
Sure. I'm in Palm Beach County. I do travel to Broward County and my closer areas, but by Zoom, I have done mediations in Tampa and other areas that are farther away. So it's possible, but I will say, I think it's more valuable if people outside of an area are looking for a retired judge. I would really focus on looking for a retired judge who was in the courthouse where your case is going to be, someone local. And yes, of course, I'm available. If you wanted to look me up, you can find me on my website and you can book mediations online. I make it simple and I can be anywhere with the power of Zoom. But the value of a retired judge who was in that courthouse, that judge, that retired judge, or that mediator from your area is more knowledgeable about who your judge is and how things are done in that circuit, in that county. So, like I have no idea I'm in Palm Beach County. I have no idea how the judges and how the courts work on the regular in Tallahassee or in Sarasota. I would not have any authority. I don't think the attorneys would really have as much confidence. Right. And not just the attorneys, but the parties. So if you want somebody who, like right now, my mediation today, I say, oh, I know who your judge is. I used to work with your judge. I'm good friends with your judge still. And even, I make it clear that I can't tell you what your judge is going to do because I have no idea. Just because I'm friends with your judge doesn't mean I know. But I think
it brings credibility.
There's a lot more credibility. So my advice to anybody looking for a mediator who's a retired judge is to probably go to my friend Google and type in retired judge mediator, your county, whether it's Martin County, Dade County, Pinellas County, Leon County, put in retired judge mediator, that county, and see what comes up. You'll probably find some, because a lot of the retired judges do go into mediation. I think it's because, for me, I know the trauma that I saw from the bench, especially in the family division, that it doesn't matter how smart your judge is, how much your judge cares. There is no way a judge can really make it right for a family, even if the decisions are the best. The family, to get to that decision, is torn apart, and when there are children involved, sometimes it's just irreparable, and there is nothing that can be done to make it better. So a lot of those judges, like myself, want to try to help people before it gets to that stage.
Absolutely. So if you're not in one of the counties that Jessica represents in, wherever you are in the country or the world, search up retired judge, matrimonial judge in your jurisdiction, your county, your region. And if you can choose between just your everyday mediator and a mediator with some experience on the bench, I think that Jessica has done a pretty good job of describing why that brings added value. Jessica, thank you so much. This has been delightful, informative, like really powerful. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and chat with us.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. And if you have any questions or anyone wants to reach out to me, I'd be happy to do my best to get you some answers.
Absolutely. Reach out to info@journeybeyonddivorce.com and we'll forward it to Jessica. And we'll be back again real soon with another episode. Until then, you take care.